Welcome back to Casey Talks EV. Now, yesterday I was supposed to be heading down to London. Now, unfortunately, due to a medical thing, I wasn't able to go. However, now that's all cleared up and I'm now able to finally go down to London for the whatever's rest of the weekend I've got. So there are two major differences of this particular trip compared to previous long distance road trips. First of all, I'll be not using BP Pulse preferentially. Now, the reason why is because, as you can see from this table, they have had a second price increase and they have lessened the difference between having a subscription versus the app. This price in particular has meant that essentially it's just better off using other networks which are either cheaper or more reliable, or you don't need a subscription in order to use them. And as a result, I don't really use that many rapid chargers. I mean, you can have a look here for my statistics. To be honest with you, actually, BP Pulse has been fairly reliable for me when I've been recording it. I completely forgot when I started, but essentially it's been fine. But as a result, I'm not now using preferentially BP Pulse. The second thing I'm going to be doing is using a better route planner. Because I now don't know where these new chargers are, not to mention there's been a sudden huge increase in the amount of chargers that are available now, thanks to GridServe Electric Highway, I won't be using ZapMap to plan my route. I'll be using a better route planner. Now, a better route planner has definitely become a lot better in terms of its interface, and that's the reason why I didn't really use it to start off with. But now I absolutely love it to bits. In fact, actually, you can have a look here about how easy it is now to set all sorts of different parameters, and it just makes life a lot easier. So today's route will be heading down to Birdmansea and back, approximately about 350-400 miles. I do have some destination charging, so I booked a parking space with a EV charging point using Just Park. It's right by where I'm basically going to be staying, so fingers crossed it is going to be fine. So anyway, let's get started. So we've already had a bit of a change of plan. I'm currently here at the BP Pulse point in Long Bennington by the Co-op. Now, the reason why is because I double-checked ZapMap about half an hour before I arrived, and it turns out both chargers were being used. For those who don't know, with GridServe chargers still, you cannot have two cars charging on one unit. That's still, as far as I'm aware, hasn't been implemented as of December 2021. The only charger that wasn't being used was actually the 22 kilowatt point, which I'm guessing is designed for Renault Zoe drivers. So as a result, it just made a lot more sense for me to actually get to the BP Pulse point, and second of all, to charge up. It's much better to be charging rather than not to be charging and waiting around for someone to finish up. So my current journey, I've done 70 miles or approximately 70 miles. I was averaging about 45 miles per hour, but obviously it's been a little bit longer than that. Hour and a half to do and 3.2 miles per kilowatt hour. I was babying it a little bit. I was doing a tiny bit of eco driving, so that is to be expected. The second thing I probably should mention is that this BP Pulse point is definitely not charging at the highest rate. I'm only getting roughly 36 kilowatts, so 405 volt now at 91 amps. Luckily, because the MG ZS EV's original pack is quite high in terms of voltage, I am able to leverage that tiny bit higher kilowatt because, again, voltage multiplied by amps gives you your kilowatt. So I'm guessing that the charger is currently current limiting. The other thing I should mention is that the touchscreen isn't working. So what I'm going to do is I will call BP Pulse after I'm finished up to get them to do a soft reset. And hopefully for the next person, it should be working. The other thing that I probably should mention as well is that because the touchscreen isn't working, the only way to initiate a charge is by using the app. And if it comes up on the app, then you can basically just plug in and it will do everything without needing you to touch the screen, which is quite nice. So I'm probably going to charge up to around 75%. My plan is I am going to try and aim for that Cambridge services, that a better route planner has told me to go to, and fingers crossed it's not going to be as busy. Although that being said, I didn't expect this one to be particularly busy, and it kind of was. So fingers crossed it should be fine. So I've just arrived here at Cambridge Extra Services. That stint wasn't that long, to be honest. It was only 58 miles, average speed of 66 miles per hour. It's taken me less than an hour to do, and 2.9 miles per kilowatt hour. Now, again, there definitely was a wait here, so I waited about 5 minutes or so. There was a ID-free charging up. Unfortunately, again, the Grid Serve Electric Highway, they haven't enabled to connect to charging, and if I'm perfectly honest, this particular location, it is a bit of a faff. I might take some video of it, but essentially they're doing quite a lot of remodeling, which obviously is not great for us, but we will manage. So if I'm honest, the charging speed isn't that great either. I have a feeling that having 2 chargers charging away means that I'm not going to get a particularly good speed. I'm only getting about 400 volt and 90 amps again. I'm starting to think maybe it is the car limiting it, but I did arrive at quite a low state of charge, so I arrived at about 7%. Which is a bit unfortunate, but I can stay here for a reasonable amount of time. Hopefully there's no one waiting after me. One benefit though is that these Grid Serve Electric Highway systems are much better than the previous ones from Ecotricity. Simply contactless, job done. And in fact, actually, it's now cheaper on contactless than BP Pulse, although I guarantee that's probably not going to stay for very long. So yes, at some point in time, I really do hope they will enable to connect to charging, because that'll be just much better. Even if it's slower, like in this case, you know, charge balancing and load balancing and things, it still will be a much better experience. So fingers crossed, it will be absolutely fine. So I'm going to stay here for a little while. Bear in mind, I do have destination charging where I'm going, so I don't really need to worry too much about the actual charging experience when I'm in London, but I do need to get to London. Okay, so I've just arrived at my overnight parking spot here in London. Unfortunately, it is not exactly where I need it to be, but hopefully the DLR, Overground, I don't know what all the other tube lines are, but essentially it should be fine. Now, this parking spot I've explicitly picked because it has a charging station. This actually is a Type 2. It's not tethered, but I think they've provided me a cable, which is lovely. So I'm going to plug in, and then hopefully I might get some footage around when I'm in London, but I think that's it for the car, so I will see you tomorrow evening.
All I want
Okay, so I've just got back to my car by Canary Wharf in London. So my day in London, or the weekend in London, is at least finished. It's just before 5 p.m. So I've put my details into a better route planner. It recommends that I stop at the Lidl in Peterborough. Now, the one thing I will say is that it doesn't give me any more stops after that. I think that might be a bit of a push, especially if I don't really want to leave this car charging up to 98%. I want to kind of leave around 90%. So what I might have to do is I might have to make a second stop, just a quick pit stop in order to get home. I think that would be a better solution actually than staying at the charger and going above 90%. By the way, I have done a video on the BMS update thing, which you can have a look at here. So essentially, I think what I'm going to do is I am going to go to the Lidl in Peterborough, charge up to about 90%, and then I'm going to probably make another stop. The biggest problem is that one of them is a BP pulse point, which obviously I'm not really trying to use. And the second one is it is a pod point. Now, it might be a range issue because that's an additional 10-15 miles. And B, last time I had a go at using it, this was a couple of weeks ago for work purposes, it didn't work. And although PodPoint have come back to me and said that it does work, I don't really want to rely on it. No one's used that charger since. The last Zap Map update actually was from me. So I'm probably, well, best policy would probably be to aim for the BP pulse point and then just have a quick pit stop to get me home. So anyway, let's leave London. Okay, so we've had a bit of a change of plan already, but it's nothing to do with the car itself. The car's doing absolutely fine. I'm currently here at Peterborough Services. Now, the reason why is because when I was messing about with a better route planner, I didn't really want to do two different stops. So a better route planner was recommending, and I have a feeling it was erring on the side of caution. That was why. But essentially, it wanted me to stop at Cambridge Extra Services and then Grantham Services. I have a feeling that's because it wanted to shorten the distance between Grantham Services and Hull, which I think is absolutely fine, especially if you are a newbie or a beginner to EVs. I think that's a pretty reasonable strategy. However, what I then realised was if I stopped here, and I completely forgot this place existed, I can avoid the extra couple miles going into Lidl in Peterborough and then the extra couple miles going out. So we're currently charging away right now. So we've done 90.3 miles, average speed of 52 miles per hour and 42 minutes, and 3.4 miles per kilowatt hour, which is really, really good. So essentially, as a result, I'm just going to leave this here charging up to about 90% state of charge. I might as well do that. I might get a couple more extra percent in as well. I have a feeling I am going to have to stop another 5-10 minutes for a bit of a pit stop, which is not the worst thing on earth. So I'm just going to let this charge up to 90%. I am going to go get something to eat, go to the toilet, all that wonderful good stuff. Okay, so I've just got back to Hull now. So I've done 109.6 miles, average speed of 52 miles per hour, 2 hours and 5 minutes. It was 2 hours and 2 minutes, and 3.6 miles per kilowatt hour. In total, I've done 401 miles, average speed of 39 miles per hour. I've been in the car for 10 hours and 10 minutes, and 3.3 miles per kilowatt hour average efficiency. Basically, what happened on the route from Peterborough to Hull was someone was essentially being very, very slow on the A15, which meant that I clawed back a lot of efficiency. And in the end, I just didn't bother charging or doing a quick pit stop at the pod point in Barton upon Humber. So the first question I want to ask on this road trip, at least, is have I been able to move away from BP Pulse? And essentially, I think the answer is yes. So, okay, I had to use one of the chargers on the way down that I've always used when going down to London, for example, the Co-op in Long Bennington. But the other charges have been a GridServe one. I had some destination charging through Just Park, by the way. And I got another charge, a GridServe back up here. And then I didn't actually have to use that pod point in the end, essentially because of obviously that eco driving, let's say. I was able to make it home no problem, and it's just not really worth charging at 27p a kilowatt hour, when here I could do it for 5.5p per kilowatt hour on my Go Faster tariff. So all in all, I reckon, yes, I can start to move a lot of my charging away, and I don't really need that subscription fee anymore. It's definitely still worth keeping the app, just on a whim that I may need to use, for example, a BP Pulse charger. If the GridSurf charger is very occupied, I can see that we are going to have quite a lot of queues for these GridSurf chargers as the time goes on. Although that being said, I'll put it a bit here, but GridSurf essentially are building a lot of these EV forecourts, which is absolutely excellent. So well done, GridSurf, for doing so. But overall, I reckon, yes, I can move a lot of my charging away from BP Pulse now, and with the alternatives being what? Instavolt, which charge a relatively reasonable rate given the fact that they are normally fairly rapid, and on top of that, they're extremely reliable, and they normally have multiple stalls per charger as well. PodPoint, which is very cheap, not to mention, or good value, not to mention they are basically in every Tesco and every Lidl nowadays, and also GridSurf electric highway chargers, which essentially are on every motorway services. They're 30p a kilowatt hour and they're contactless. I don't know how long that's going to stay that way, but hopefully for a little bit longer. So what do I think about a better route planner finally? And the simple answer is definitely, if you're a beginner to an EV, or to be honest, even if you're a veteran when it comes to EVs, I'd probably get the app. Most certainly, it has improved in terms of its interface over the last couple of years, and it is very easy to use. It basically takes a lot of the guesswork out of picking rapid chargers. One thing I will say is that at some point in time, especially when you get used to what charging network is available, you will start to realize that you know a lot of the chargers which are available. For example, on the way back up to Hull, it for some reason picked 2 separate stops. In the end, it was just much better off for me to charge a lot more at Peterborough. So charge up to 93%, I think, state of charge I charged up to, and then essentially do a bit of eco driving to get back home. I'll be honest, that's nothing against the app itself. That's more of a case of, well, it doesn't know exactly everything. It doesn't know perfectly what the exact temperature is. It doesn't know that there is someone trying to do 40 miles an hour up the A15. And anyway, there is an alternatives button on a better route planner, which, to be honest, I never really used. But as far as I'm aware, it will find alternative chargers on your route. So to conclude, essentially, definitely get a better route planner. I don't know whether, in particular, the premium version is worth the extra money, especially given it's a monthly fee. You do get Android Auto and Apple CarPlay integration, which could be very useful for you if you use it very often. But in my case, I just like setting the charges. I like it basically using it as a route planner and then just putting everything into Waze anyway. By the way, I have done a video on Waze if you want to have a look at it here. So I think that's pretty much it. So thank you for joining me on this journey. So if you liked this video or you found it informative, please give it a like, dislike it if you didn't. Please make sure you are subscribed to this channel and click on that bell icon as well, so you are getting your notifications. And I think that's pretty much it. So thank you for watching and talk to you later.